Okay, hi everybody. Ooh, I look sort of delayed from my point of view. I hope things are going to work okay for everybody else tonight. Shouldn't have anybody else on the internet. I'm all plugged in, but sometimes things do work a little slowly here at my house, internet-wise. I'm going to start out by playing a couple of tunes. I know I do have a question from Donna via email that I want to get to about bowhold and some of the tone things, but especially what a bowhold might look like from different directions. So I'm excited to take a look at that. But I've got this funny little tune in my head right now. It's a Schottische, and it is called, I think it's known as the Finn Schottische, at least here in Maine. Learned it from Katie Newell. Let's see if you remember what key it's in. Nope. Nope, that's the Norway Schottische. Huh, what happened? Well, maybe I'll play the Norway Schottische, because now that's the one I can think of. I had the other one in my head, and then it went away. So here's the Norway Schottische, which is a tune by Mellie Dunham, who's a fiddler from Norway, Maine. So this is a Norway, Maine Schottische. And actually, I should move my screen a little bit more, or my body, one or the other, so I've got more of my instrument in the view here. There it is, the Norway Schottische. And that actually got me thinking about Scandinavia and Scandinavian tunes. And the idea that I should maybe play a Hambo. I was playing over in Farmington, Maine for the country dance last weekend. And lovely folks there especially requested a Hambo, which used to be very, very common. Actually, a lot of the couples dances, you know, when I first started country dancing, which would have been the probably mid-90s, it was rare to go to a country dance and not have some sort of couples dance. Sometimes at the very beginning of the night, and then definitely in before the start of the second half after the break. And so Schottish, very common, polka, and Hambo. And now I would say you almost see the Hambo more frequently than any of the others, and you don't see any of those couples dances as regularly, at least at the dances around here in Maine. There certainly are, you know, sometimes that it'll come out, and most likely a Hambo. But they're all nice dances, and I sort of miss them, but I guess maybe not as many people are familiar with the dances themselves. And not always, the musicians aren't always familiar with the tunes either. But so that was a nice Schottish. And let's see about what was the Hambo I played? I don't know the name of it. And sometimes the name is what helps remember the tune. Maybe I'd better not play that Hambo then. Oh no, there it comes. I think I might have that in a book somewhere. I'll take a peek at it. Oh, and I'm seeing some message here from Maria. I'm playing a Norwegian Hambo, and I can't remember the name of it. But I think it may be in a collection, A Little Couple-Dancemusik, spelled with a K at the end. I think I have that in the house. At one point, at one point my bandmate gave it to me, and I can't remember if I still have it or if he has it now again. But I will look after this up on the piano and see if it happens to be up there. And yeah, it's not in the stack of music books that's piled down here in the basement. I'll see if there's a name for it in there, if it is in fact in there, but it is a Hambo, which is a Norwegian, a dance that's commonly at this point anyways associated with Norway, but also done at a number of contra dances around the US. So I think I'll play one more tune. And oh, there's that thin Schottische again. Let's see if I can pull that out. I think I might have even made a lesson for this once, but I could be wrong. There it is. Okay. Now I finally got the beginning of it. I better take advantage of it and play it. So this is just called Thin Schottische, another Schottische, and this one is in A minor. So there it is, and I was suddenly feeling not quite sure about how many times you're supposed to play each of the parts. I'll look, and if I've made a lesson for it with perhaps the correct, oh look, Maria's on it. I did make a video of this, and it's good, thank you. So hopefully there I play it the correct number of times. I think I was doing it right just now, but I had doubts as I was playing that maybe I was supposed to play each of the parts twice as long. So that one will be up. I'll try to link that in the description of the video after I stop tonight. And after I put the boys to bed, I will try to get this out publicly with links to the different tunes and things like that. So, but I did want to address the question from Donna that she sent via email about bowhold and getting a look at it. So I'm going to do some finagling here. I think, let's see if I can put my fiddle down. Never put your fiddle on the floor. So I'll try to show this from a bunch of different angles. And this is what I've come to, though actually my fingers right now are more together than they often are. right here, often I will have a little bit more of a space. And some of this is going to be tricky because I'm often supporting a lot of the weight of the bow on the string. So sort of hallmarks of this side of the bow hold, and I know, Donna, you're mostly asking about the sort of the front view. I have my two fingers sort of over the edge of the frog here, touching the side of the frog. My pinky is behind it, and sometimes the way things line up, you know, your hand might be more down here with your pinky actually on the screw. Sometimes it's more often for me on this bow, it's a little bit more like this. And then the pointer finger either with a bit of a gap or kind of close together with the other fingers. Different people teach that different ways. The gap for me allows, that's what I do a lot of my changing pressure with. So I'll just grab a little bit with that finger. And often it really looks like wiggling this finger a little bit like this to dig into the bow. Maybe I do want my fiddle in my hand so I can demonstrate. So doing this kind of pulling to accent notes. So let's do, I'll play that tune an octave down. It's a little hard to see because I think the quality of the video is not quite high enough. But maybe if you slow it down, you'll be able to see that I'm kind of grabbing with this finger. The other thing I do is I'm sort of rotating my whole arm. I realized this as I was describing it to a student this past week, that I'm sort of tipping my, I'm mostly using my arm, my whole arm to put pressure on the bow in terms of how much pressure I want to make a sound. And then what this pointer finger is doing is just articulation, except that that pointer finger is also sort of transferring the weight from my arm. I'm sort of tipping my arm up, sort of twisting my wrist almost a little bit to put the pressure into the bow, which combined with the speed and the amount of bow that I'm using and the string that I'm on, and whether I'm near the bridge or near the fingerboard, are what's going to give you the quality of sound that you want or that you don't want, depending on how those factors are all combining. So just to run through this again, and I think I've talked about this before, but just in case, and for those who are just watching this right now, so the faster you're going in terms of actual speed of your hand through the air, the more pressure you're going to need on the bow. The slower you're going, the less. The shorter your bow stroke, also less pressure. Longer bow stroke is often going to need more pressure as well. Well, that's not true. I guess the length maybe has less to do with it, except how, you know, how much length you're covering in a specific period of time. So it's really that's, you know, distance over distance over time is speed, as good old physics tells us. So you know, I can make a very long bow, but if I make it slowly, I need a lot, very little pressure, really holding the bow in the air. And what's helping me really do that is the pinky. That's the role of the pinky, is to help balance the weight of the rest of the bow. If I take my pinky off, my bow falls over. Oh, one other piece about these fingers is it's helpful to notice that your fingers should be pointing down towards that corner of the frog. Very commonly, people seem to get a bow hold going where their fingers are pointed sort of the other way, and that is very awkward when it comes to using your wrist. So if you're holding the bow and you're in the air, your fingers should be slanted sort of towards that corner of the frog, or sort of towards the ground. Really what we need to talk about is the thumb, and we'll get there in a second. So I can play a very light and long bow stroke that will sound good. I can play a long bow stroke that's fast, and then I need to press a lot harder. Also, the closer I am to the bridge, see, there's not a very good sound. I need to press harder. But if I press that same amount out here, it would be too much. I can press much lighter out further towards the fingerboard. So this zone in the middle is not the only place that you can play, but often people are encouraged to aim for that because that's where you're, it's the easiest to get a nice tone. The other thing that matters is you have to put a little more pressure into the low strings, the thicker strings, than to the higher strings. It's easy to overdrive the E string. And most of the time, if people are getting squawking kinds of noises, what I've noticed is that they tend to be moving the bow slowly, that they're thinking about something, and what they need to do is just to move the bow a little bit more and use a little bit more distance with the bow, and that will often help the problem. The opposite problem is often that people are playing too lightly because they're afraid of that squawking, crunchy sound. And so then or they're using all bows that are too long. And what you really need often is a combination of long and short bows. Or of course, I guess there you've got all eighth notes. Almost. So you could do them all with short bows, but you need to use enough bow for the amount of pressure you have. Let me think about a jig. That's all eighth notes too. So I'm doing long, short, and then there I'm really doing different stuff with my bow. I'm kind of hopping so I don't lose track of my bow, but I'm doing a certain amount of pressure for that long note and long bow, and then really playing a half a bow, but then bringing the rest through the air. So I don't, do big down, little up, big down, little up, big down, and be out of bow. But back to the bowhold. Now I'm going to put my fiddle down again so I can turn around and you can see my thumb. So here's what things look like from the inside. And I should say as a disclaimer that if you watch my bow, it is not always going to be how I'm telling you right now, my bow hold. I feel like for me, that's sort of a weak spot in my playing that I will tend to be tense. I'll flatten my pinky out rather than have it kind of curved. I'll sometimes tense my hand and be playing more with my whole arm, and I wish that wasn't so, but it is. So be forewarned that you may see my bow hand doing other things, and that I actually wish that it wasn't. So that's another thing, you can watch a lot of different professional players and they'll do a lot of different things in terms of their technique, but fairly frequently when you talk to them, you'll find that they actually, for some of the, injuries to their body reasons that we talk about, that they actually want to be doing something different. So the most important part to me in terms of relaxing your hand is to have your thumb bent. And sometimes my thumb's further out, but most of the time, or more, more straightened. I'll try to get really in close. Again, I have sort of an awkward angle. I'm going to turn you towards the stove so I can get my hand right in there. So you can see, perhaps, that, oh, this is very awkward. Maybe I'll stand up. That my thumb is bent. Maybe it'll help turn it upside down. There's just no good way to see in there, especially holding the bow. But I'll turn it around lots of different directions. Whee! My thumb in there is bent. And that is for a specific reason, which is that I want to be able to grip the bow as lightly as possible. And it should really be so light in your hand that your fingers are able to move. They're not gripping the stick. And you could really just take your bow right out of your hand without your fingers like letting go first. It should be really gently gripped in your hand. And sometimes I'll actually like hold somebody's finger and have them feel how lightly I'm holding my bow. And sometimes I am putting more pressure, you know, especially in that pointer finger. But actually when I'm putting pressure in the pointer finger, often the rest of my fingers are floating a little bit more. And I'm really, you know, using the force on the string to hold the bow in place, and my other fingers less, but they're always ready to kind of spring back into place because I like to play and be taking the bow off the string quite frequently. Having the thumb bent in this way, so really I have a dent. You can see the dent. Oh, I got one good camera angle on this video. You can see there's a dent in my finger. That's where my bow is hitting. It's a little cold down here in the basement, so my skin is very denty and very conducive to showing you this. So it's really, you know, not the nail, but just behind the nail is where I'm putting my thumb on the stick. And I'm usually in between the frog and the wrap. This bow has quite a large space in that area. Sometimes I'm further up. I do, and Donna mentioned this in her email, you know, she said, oh, I have trouble, you know, if my hand's loose, my hand slips up the bow. That happens to me as well, and I will find myself sometimes playing and trying to move my hand down because I'm running out of bow. So I haven't quite solved that problem either. I think it's because there's so much weight in the frog, and when your hand's really loose on those down bows, the bow is actually slightly slipping in your hand. I don't usually get quite, you know, to that third of the bow spot, but I can definitely get up here pretty easily and then be out at the tip. And while I can't actually, if I'm holding down by the frog, I can't quite keep my bow straight and get it to the tip. My arm's not quite long enough without going out to the side. I do get myself to a point where I'm going off the string with the tip, and I don't want that. And so I'm, you know, snaking my finger back down the bow, crawling down. But what I've discovered is that this bent thumb is really a helpful piece. And you can go ahead and bump into the hair with your finger there. It does get a little discolored. You can maybe see on mine. It's a little bit gray from the grease of my hand, my natural hand oils, and all the rosin and bits of dust that it then picks up. But what is happening then is you're able to just be holding the stick from beneath with just the bone sort of supporting it. So it's like you're, you know, it's almost like you're creating sort of a tripod for your bow where you're gently supporting it from lots of different directions, and then it's able to just sit in that cradle of forces without you doing lots of squeezing. Because anytime you're squeezing any part of your hand, that's engaging muscles that could be relaxed in order for you to move your bow really smoothly. And that's particularly true, I think, of the thumb, that if you're sticking your thumb through the bow, you know, and you imagine you're holding onto this thing and it feels very precious and you want to not drop it, and so you're pulling up with your thumb, you're squeezing there. If your thumb is straight, people's tendency is to be pulling, really pushing up with their thumb. And that's often makes it more difficult to move your wrist. Whereas if your thumb is bent, then you can just be holding it gently from the bottom. Your fingers are anchoring it on the top, and then they're also anchoring it on the far side. And so the only side that you're not holding it on really is the side that's facing you. and that's the side that's facing in towards your hand, so it feels the most secure like that. So that's what I like. I hope you're able to see it from different sides. The space in here, people talk about that a lot. I think as a way to talk about avoiding collapsing your hand, should be doing this. And gosh, I'm not entirely sure, except it seems way more comfortable. I'm not totally sure why, the reason for that. Yeah, I could come up with some theories probably, but off the top of my head, I don't have a reason. Maybe it's just the comfort. So that's the bowhold that I've settled with at this point, and I am constantly trying to refine what I do. And I think different things work best too depending on the sounds that you want. So for me, I think that space that I sometimes put between the pointer finger and the other fingers, that makes it easier to get the crunch and the percussive sounds that I really like. And somebody who wants more of a mostly smooth style might have their hand closer together because they don't need that pushing advantage. Apparently, it's coming up on bedtime. I didn't think I was so tired. So Donna, I hope, and other people, I hope that's helpful. The only other pieces of advice I can think of are take something that's not your bow and try to hold it, because sometimes it's, we're so nervous about dropping this precious thing, and rightly so, that that adds tension. So if you can find something, ideally with a weight at one end, I know I've seen people put something heavy on, like a pencil or a piece of dowel, and just play around with that. But then the other thing is, when my wrist was finally loosening up and my bow hold was finally relaxing years into playing, I went through this period of time where I dropped my bow once a month, maybe more, really frequently, sort of distressingly often. So don't buy a super nice bow until after that period of time. I don't know. I still will occasionally fumble my bow, and so far, thankfully, it's been fine because I really like this bow and I don't want to do anything adverse to it. But hopefully that's good and will help get you on the right direction with the bow questions. Unless anybody else has questions that they want to add, and anybody else, I guess, would just be Maria, then I think I might play some more tunes, because I don't have anything else in particular to talk about that anybody else has brought up. Oh, though, one seasonally appropriate thing to just say is that this is the season in the Northern Hemisphere, especially the northern part of the Northern Hemisphere, where often our humidity is dropping quite a lot. And so don't be alarmed if you look into your fiddle case and find that all your pegs are loose. It happens to a lot of people at some point. And you can see all your strings will be loose, all your pegs, or just sometimes it's just one or two strings, and one or two of your pegs have popped loose because the humidity has gone down to the point where the pegs shrink and don't have enough grip to hold them in place. It's this, the opposite process of what happens in the summer when sometimes you can't move your pegs. And if you have, well-fit pegs, this should be less of a problem, but it is not an uncommon scenario. So the only thing you want to watch out about is you kind of want to just give your violin a little shake. Make sure that there isn't anything rattling around, because if there's something rattling around inside, it would likely be the sound post, which you can see if you're not going to be able to see it in the video, but if you look in through this, through the F-hole on the treble side, the E string side, you should be able to see a little stick, and it helps to hold it like this. Here you can see my really bendy bridge. Don't look at my bendy bridge. I'll turn it so it doesn't look like it's bendy for you. I really need to make a new bridge. I should just show you. Okay, so this is what a bridge looks like when it is warped. It's not supposed to look like that. It's supposed to be straight. It's supposed to be a right angle here, and it is a curve. This is no fault of Richard Backus, who made this violin bridge. This is 100% my own fault, and I have been really lazy about fixing it, and I really hope Richard doesn't watch this video because he really wants me to fix it. Oh, it's even worse than I've looked at it recently. Okay, enough about my bad bridge. Anyway, if you look in the E string side through the sound hole, the F hole, you should be able to see a little stick going up and down, and that's your sound post. And the only danger sometimes is that if the tension comes off, usually it has to be all of the strings, and even then sometimes this doesn't happen. Enough tension can come up off the top plate that the bridge, the sound post, which is held very delicately in place, isn't in place anymore and is rattling around. And then you should not put tension back on your strings until you've had somebody use a special tool to get in and set the sound post back up in the correct place, because the sound post is also structural. Its biggest job, or well, perhaps its biggest job is being structural, but what part of its job is also to carry vibrations from the top plate to the back plate, and then those plates vibrating helps all the air inside vibrate. But you should not tighten your strings if the sound post is down. Usually, however, that's not a problem, and you'll find a peg loose, string loose, and you can just tighten your string or strings back up. You do then want to sort of check your bridge, make sure it's centered, because sometimes when the strings get really loose, the bridge can move too, and that can really change your sound a lot of your violin. So you want to make sure the bridge usually should be centered in between the F holes, and it should usually be pretty much centered on the little notches in the F holes. And then you can check and make sure it's not leaning one direction or the other, or you'll end up with a bridge that looks like mine, which you don't want. It still is sounding pretty good in my own defense, which is why I haven't done anything about it. But it'll probably sound really amazing if and when I fix it. Maybe that'll be a Thanksgiving project sometime when November, my weekends get a lot less crazy, and maybe in November that'll be the thing to do. Any other winter, fall things? Make sure not to leave your fiddle next to your wood stove. Both getting too hot and too dry. Sometimes humidifying your case in the winter can be a good idea, or wherever you're keeping your violin. You can put a damp it or other humidity kind of thing right inside. Usually they feed in through the F hole, and that will release moisture. It just helps keep your instrument from cracking, which we all want, and helps keep the glue from popping on the joints. And then in the case, actually, some people I've heard of people putting like an apple or an apple core in their case, but that always seems like if you don't practice them for a few days, you might be in trouble. So the other thing I've heard that I like is if you want to make your own humidifier, take some sort of pill bottle or something that seals pretty well, poke a couple, because it doesn't need to seal very well, poke a couple of holes in it, and take a piece of sponge, get it wet and wring it out well, and then slip that bit of sponge into the container to act as a, so the sponge isn't right on anything, and then that will kind of gradually release moisture out into your case if you want a little DIY project. And I would maybe tend to keep that in a pocket or something of the case, not necessarily, both so it doesn't rattle around in with the violin, and so any drips don't go onto the violin. So there's my fall fiddle care lecture. Let me play another tune. I've been thinking a lot about Pay to Haut. Been teaching it to some of my students and reviewing it with some other students. So why don't I play that? It's a nice Quebec tune, Down East tune. There's Paid Haut. Let's see, what other tunes do I feel like playing? Ooh, I would like to play that. Here's a crooked Quebec tune called March à Thomas Pomerleau. It's in the key of G. I learned this one from Guy Bouchard, from whom I've learned most of my favorite Quebec crooked tunes. Though there's an ongoing argument. He says this isn't crooked. So do some other people whose opinions I very much respect. It does indeed take up the normal number of beats, but the phrasing, I think, is crooked. That it's not, phrases of 4 beats per measure. So I don't play this for contra dances. I think there maybe are people who do. And I definitely have had the conversation with people, and everyone seems to have a fairly strong opinion. And the opinions are not all the same. So watch out. But it's a great tune. Everybody agrees on that. was thinking about my thumb a lot while I was doing that in my bow hold, which I noticed has crept up the bow, as Donna was talking about. This is actually fairly mild creeping, and I did move it back once as I was thinking about it. I also noticed that I do straighten my thumb out for periods of time and then bring it back. I think it has to do with the position that as I move my hand away, I do tend to unbend my thumb. Though you wouldn't need to. It's not necessary, but I do seem to do that. And then when I'm really bringing it bent is when I'm picking it up. Oh, and I'm always leaving it, so I'm sort of flattening it out, but I'm still leaving the very tip in there. I'm never sticking it through, because that's really where I would be using more of a grabbing motion and using more muscles. So there's more thoughts on bowhold. Let's see. Looks like we have time for another tune. This is where I want my friend Bennett. Oh, I did also realize that I learned that not from Guy Bouchard. I think I learned it from Listen Schneckenberger and John Cote. But I think they probably learned it from Guy Bouchard. So it sort of comes to the same thing. I was just going to say I wish I had my friend Bennett here, because he likes to play this game sometimes where he'll just say, I want you to play an Irish tune in the key of G or whatever, and that, or a Canadian jig in A, and that will help me come up with what I want to play. So maybe I should play a Canadian jig in A. Actually, this is a tune that I've been playing a lot also, called the Gigue du Salon, the living room jig. And I may have played this here before. I'm having sort of redundancy thoughts, but hopefully it's not redundant for all of you. Really nice tune. I think this is a Simon Riopelle composition. I'm pretty sure it is. So, hope this is okay with you, Simon, that I'm playing your tune. But perhaps it's not. Perhaps it's somebody else. I think it is a more recent composition. Lovely jig in the key of A. I'm going to move over again. I'm realizing I'm sort of finally placed in the viewfinder here. And we'll give you less of my face and more of my bow. actually, I was thinking I should play also Le Canal en Octobre, which is translates as the canal in October, since it's October office hours. So here's one more for you. This is a lovely French Schottish, and this is the Schottish show. I want to have the Schottish show. That seems like lots of fun. This is a French Schottish by a French accordionist named Frédéric Paris, which I presume in French you pronounce Frédéric Paris, but I haven't met him, so I haven't asked him. It's a lovely, lovely, lovely little tune that really got a lot of attention a while ago, and seems to have sort of faded into the background. So, provided I can remember how it goes, I'll play it for you. There it is. I think European Schottish tempo is a little faster. I'm sort of dreamily playing it here as my lullaby. But here's more, let's see. And I guess one last little personal message to Michelle, if you watch this, you should learn that tune because Sandy really likes it. And we had an epic arrangement of it one year at Fiddle Camp with beginning violinists and the accordions and the whistles and the cellos, I think. And it was like one of the best moments at Maine Fiddle Camp for me ever. It was just magical. It was this beautiful, beautiful arrangement, wall of sound, including these rank beginner fiddle players who just totally dug in and played this tune, not fast like I just played, but nice and slow and beautiful. And it was one of my highlights. And Sandy was there leading the whistlers. And I think I might have learned it from Sandy, actually. Can't remember where I got it. Anyway, thank you to Sandy if that's where I got it from. And I hope everybody has a lovely night. Try to get this up for reviewing on YouTube as soon as I can. All right, good night.